The Discussing Network presents Discussing Comics. I am Kyle Jones, and I want to welcome back once again the one, the only, Clarence Brown. Clarence, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. Glad to be back with you to talk about some Loki today.
Awesome. Well, Loki is officially over, and all is said and done, and branched, and all that good stuff. So, for anyone who has not seen, let's get this out of the way. Anyone who has not seen the Disney Plus series Loki, put us on pause, go out, watch the episode, watch all 6 episodes, the series, come back, because from this moment forward, spoilers. Clarence Brown, Loki, some review. What say ye?
Man, I enjoyed it, man. I enjoyed it. Really surprising and world changing events that happen in this series, and I'm totally on board for all of the quirkiness, the timey wimey, all of it. Give it to me, the multiversiness, if that's a word. Uh, yeah, man, it's great. I love it. I can't wait to dive into it. What about you?
All right, so I keep seeing people say over and over on the internet and in articles, this is what Doctor Who should still be.
That gets on my nerves. It gets on my nerves when people say that.
And I don't know if it's because of the time thing and they're going to different times and people are actually enjoying it. I don't know, but I know I enjoyed every single episode of this. I think it did a lot of universe MCU shattering stories, but I think it was also a character story.
Yep.
And I think it 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 has several layers to it, and I think it was well written, and I just can say nothing. I'll get it out of the door. I can't say anything bad about it.
Nothing bad. Wow. Are you putting on your critical eye, Cal?
I am, and I can't find anything critical to say. And you know me, I love having a bone to pick if I can find one, and I can't.
Is that from a canon point of view or a comics point of view? This is just
It
not.
was so good, I don't care about canon point of
Oh,
view.
wow. Jesus. This might be the most happy I've seen Cal in my life.
No, okay. So when the first episode of Loki came out, I asked Curtis. I said, "Are you watching it?" And his first response text back to me was, "I'm not watching a show about a villain." And my brain for every episode is once, and I've not done this yet, but my every episode I watched is where can I find redeeming qualities to convince him to say before I go to him and say, you need to watch this. And
Yeah.
I watched it in that point of view as to find reasons, and that's where I get this character arc because it is about a villain at the beginning, but I don't think he's a villain at the end.
Yeah, well, that's very similar to, I think we had the same conversation with Lee because Lee had dropped off of it. And we were like, just keep watching. It gets good. He's going to change his ways. And that's what I think the show did so beautifully is to have Loki, portrayed by Tom Hiddleston, of course, go from being very set in his ways and not seeing or not really having a true path to change. But I think what they did so great was show how insignificant he was in the grand scheme of things. And that along with him getting glimpses of what we have known from the MCU years after that event that put him on this variant path, what we know from that point on and what he gets privy to seeing, what happens to him, what happens to his mother, all of that. And then just the realization that he's just a blip on the map, uh, pushes him down the path of being a better person. I think that's what the series just does so beautifully.
So, where was the first big wow moment for you?
Wow. I don't know. Maybe it was Owen Wilson saying wow. Oh man, I don't know. The first big wow moment. Well, just the TVA itself. That this entity such as the TVA exists, and what does TVA stand for? Time
Variance
Variance
Authority.
Alliance. Of authority. Yeah.
Authority, yeah.
And just the fact that they exist at all, and of course, we're initially presented with blinders. Even they're not even privy to what's actually going on in a bigger scope, but they think they're doing this thing to keep this. What do they call it? Not the prime timeline, but
But
the
the sacred
the
timeline.
sacred. There you go, sacred timeline. Um, to prune anything that's branching or going off from the sacred timeline is kind of their mission. So the TVA as an entity, it really was a surprise to me because I knew nothing about it, and knowing that we've had all these events go on in the MCU, that our heroes have been doing their darndest to keep from world destruction, but you have this group out here called the TVA who can change anything on a whim. So um, yeah, just to know that they exist, to know they have all this power, and they're trying to preserve this sacred timeline was really the first big shock for me watching the show. What about you, man?
So I agree with you. And the thing that got me was the moment I realized they're playing in this series to turn what we know about the MCU on its heel for the next stage or next evolution of this movie universe that they've created is we spent from Avengers forward, or actually from probably Thor forward, we spent building this universe of finding the Infinity Stones and the Infinity Gauntlet, and you see this random person that's working just a cog in the machine, and his paperweights are various Infinity Stones from other realities. To me, that was like the big wow moment of they're not playing here. This is changing. They're taking these reality and time and power stones and just using them on their desk like marbles.
Borderline
They're that
insulting.
insignificant.
Yeah, and then borderline insulting to what we've went through in the past 10 years in the MCU. We have been fighting for these gems, these stones, and they're nothing more than paperweights within the walls of the TVA. So, yeah, that was definitely a huge shock to what's going on in the greater world outside of the normal sacred timeline that we all know and love.
So we see the sacred timeline, we see Loki, and this is villainous. This is full on 100% villain Loki. He's not had any redeeming hits on his timeline as we saw as he progressed in character. This is Avengers 1 first appearance bad Loki. And we see him in that stage and we see him start to progress. Where do you think he changed? He diverged. He had the enlightened aha moment.
Hmm. That's kind of hard to say because I think it was a bunch of things. Like I previously said, I think it was seeing his future, seeing his mother die, seeing what his glorious purpose actually got him in the end, dying to the hand of Thanos. So I think just seeing himself was a huge part of it. Um, and also I think really when he started to formulate a relationship in the latter half of the season with Sylvie was the thing that took him completely over the top. But I definitely think he was starting to those wheels started to turn in a different direction when he started to see what his fate was had he gone along his sacred or his the path he was supposed to go on.
So, what I like that they did with him, especially in those first three episodes, was in typical Loki form, the trickster, the liar that he always has been. You did not know if he was actually being truthful or if this was another lie trying to escape. Even when he tried, or he did escape to some degree, the whole concept of is he turning good, is he turning bad, I wasn't sure at first. And I like that guess that it was doing. This whole guesswork that it was setting up. So, what did you think about the character B-15? Curious.
You have to tell me who B-15 is.
B-15 was the female guard who was so mean to him when he
Oh,
first arrived.
she was cool. Really no opinions one way or the other than I think she was doing her job. She was a faithful soldier for the TVA. I'm not sure if it goes much beyond that. Other than I like the actor, she was in a show that was on HBO. I can't remember the name of it. I shouldn't have brought it up, but I've seen that actor in other things, and she is really good. So it was cool to see her. But other than that, her character kind of did her job. I don't think she did anything spectacular in the season.
So maybe it's the actor that I like more than the character, because I think she did an excellent job of making her character very dislikable very quickly. And because I disliked her at the very beginning. I mean, not saying that she did anything wrong. I just found her very unlikable at the very beginning. But I was so on board with her when she had her character moment and realized that she herself was a variant. And then I was on board with her thinking, oh, you're the greatest. So that has to be the actor that's making me feel that way. She had to have done such a good job for me to instantly dislike her, then on a dime flipped to liking her.
Yeah, she was she was in Lovecraft Country. That's why I remember her.
Oh,
From.
that's where I
Yeah,
recognize her from.
yeah. Wumi Masaku. I think is her name.
She played the sister
Yes.
on. Yes. Oh, okay. Now I know. Okay, maybe that was a little bit of leftover from liking her as that character.
Yeah, but I never really disliked her. I just thought she was doing her job, as with every soldier within the TVA and worker desk worker within the TVA. I feel like they were just kind of doing their job, not really knowing why they were doing it. They were just kind of doing what they thought was their purpose.
So what about Judge Renslayer?
Oh, I love her. Gugu Mbatha, if I'm saying it correct. I can
Yeah.
never pronounce her name. But
Martha
of course,
Jones' sister?
yeah, Martha Jones' sister. She was in the morning show. I just love this actor. So anything that she's in, I am game. I think she did an excellent job. Of course, we have the bigger story of her character, Ravonna Renslayer, and what connection that has to the big bad that we get by the end of the series. But yeah, I just liked her character. I think the moments with her and Loki and Owen Wilson on screen were fun, and they had a good synergy. Owen Wilson and Gugu Mbatha. So I liked her, and I did like her, seeing her be a little badass by the end of it, where even though she, again, just another cog in the wheel doing her job to the best of her ability, that she thinks she's doing the right thing, where she gets to, by the end, kind of question some of the things that she's been up to.
All right. So what about Mobius? Thoughts on him?
Wow, what would I say about Mobius? I hope he gets a jet ski. But yeah, Owen Wilson, he was fabulous in this series. Not something that I would ever think I'd see him doing in MCU.
But it worked.
Yeah, and he looked so different. That might have been what made it work for me with the gray hair. I wonder, did they intentionally make his hair gray? Is he that old? I don't know.
Or maybe he is, yeah.
Yeah, but he was great. I think he was a perfect balance again to Tom Hiddleston and also Renslayer in this series as being, not really goofy, but kind of I'm gonna tell it like it is. And he's another person just doing his job. And I don't know, there was always a mystery to his character, which I don't know if I got the answer to that in this season, but there was always a mystery to him that made him feel way more interesting than he probably was.
Got you.
Throughout this season.
So let's move on to Sylvie. And we see, we see these other variants in pictures before we meet Sylvie. And this is why I say this is written so well that I am forgiving of something that they did. So there is a character in Marvel proper. It's raining. So there is a character in Marvel proper in the comics called Amora the Enchantress, and usually she isn't trying to get in love with. She's in love with Thor, and she can enchant people by kissing them. So she has to touch them to make her magic work, and etc. and so forth. She's been around since the '60s. She's blind, etc. and so forth. There was a female second version of the Enchantress. Her name was Sylvie. So there was also a time where Loki took over Sif's body and became Lady Loki. So they took these two things and kind of mashed them together. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm still okay with that. You took this blonde headed Sylvie character, but also made her the Lady Loki, the female version of Loki. And again, it's not what happened in the comics, but I was on board with it. I actually kind of thought it was cool. What
Yeah,
did you think of her?
I think it was a delightful change. Again, I don't, I didn't read the comics, so it doesn't really bother me that much. But I will say, as far as the actor portraying the character, Sophie DiMartino, she is great. She is great. To me, she is every bit of the presence on screen that Tom Hiddleston is, and just their chemistry. I think what a lot of things that work in this series is the chemistry between characters, and those two, man, some of the scenes with them are some of my favorite things I've seen in the MCU to date. When they were, the Lamentus episode was them just having fun, and that is like one of the best things I've seen. So yeah, she does a great job of portraying all the gamut of emotions, from being sinister in the very beginning to kind of shifting into being I guess understanding between her, having this understanding between her and our Loki. And then we get once we get more of her background, what actually happened to her, we feel, kind of sympathy for the character through all
Right.
this. And she turns from being kind of this villain to kind of being the person that's gonna free us of this constraint on the multiverse. She is going to be the person to make that happen. So I truly loved her character, loved the actor portraying the character, and just some great moments between her and our Loki.
So
What
tell
about you,
me
man?
if you think I read this wrong. I took this as the only reason she was pruned was because she was female.
Well, that brings up actually a bigger question. Why are any of these guys prone?
Because they are, someone has said this is the timeline that must happen to keep
Hmm.
all timelines in this one sacred timeline. And if something else happens, then they can start branching again.
So by that logic, she should have been pruned at the point of birth, right?
I would think so.
Why would she
But
be pruned when she's 8 and running around playing with her toys? That's the part I didn't
because
get.
then you can have a cameo with the actress from The Walking Dead, Judith.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well,
You know,
maybe.
because I'm sorry, you had Walking Dead fans going, Judith.
I didn't even realize it was her, to be
Yeah,
honest. You just said.
just put a hat on her. She's Judith.
Yeah, that logic there is a little confusing of why they would wait so long to actually attempt to prune her. I'd hate for that to just be the reason because she's female. But then again, we have Kid Loki, we have Loki Gator, we have old man Loki. So I don't know. I don't know. I mean, there's very different reasons among all of them, and again, like I said, it goes back to the sacred timeline thing.
Speaking of the variations of Loki, I so loved because we had just talked about, I think in a chat, or maybe when we were talking with Lee, we had talked about how in the comics before Tom Hiddleston came along in the MCU, Loki was drawn as an older man with this costume that had these big horns on it. And the next thing we know, here's Richard E. Grant playing an older Loki with the classic Loki pre MCU coming about 2008 variations. So, what did you think of Loki variants?
Richard E. Grant is awesome. The costume still looks utterly ridiculous.
Hmm.
It looks
Agreed.
ridiculous, but he makes it work for him. He owns that crowd, man. So good on Richard E. Grant, and of course that sacrifice he had at the very end there. So he did an excellent job. Uh, Kid Loki, like all the other Lokis, I really could care less. I mean, they were just there for the story. I know there's deeper stories with President Loki and even Kid Loki that we don't really know about, but I don't know about. So I would probably be interested in diving into more of that just to get the
I've
high
never
level
heard
cliff
of
notes.
crocodile Loki before, just FYI. But have you
Hmm.
heard that if there was a blink and you miss it Thor
Yeah,
cameo
yeah, the
with
Frog
Frog Thor?
Thor.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was actually a comic story where Loki turned Thor into a frog for like I think 20 or so issues or something.
Hmm.
So, there you
Yeah, I
go.
mean, all of the variants were good. Of course, Sylvie was my favorite variant, but well, I guess we could say our Loki is our favorite variant. It's so weird because one of the things that got me too was that Tom Hiddleston is so much older. Because when they show clips of the young of Thor 1
Hmm.
and even some of the first Avengers, he just looks so young. It's like they don't even try to make him look any younger. Of course his hair and stuff looks the same, but yeah, he just looked like a little kid on those movies.
Yeah, now that you mentioned it, yeah, he did. I hadn't thought about that. Um, so we learned that they. Well, let me ask you about this question. This character, really, really quick, Miss Minutes.
Miss Bennett's was amazing. Um, yeah, very deceptive, almost like an all-seeing eye type of character. Maybe it's Siri if Siri got any better
Hmm.
in like 100 years. But yeah, I liked Miss Minute. She was fun. The voice actor did a great job, and just to see that 2D animation jumping around in our 3D world, I thought was a nice little touch. Yeah, but Miss Minutes was awesome. Definitely, you can relate her back to Clippy or Badgie if
Oh,
you've
I
been
got you
watching
one better.
Star Trek
Hearing the
Discovery.
snarkiness of Miss Minutes, just a little bit of attitude, because I've got to go there. I was thinking, Olivia from Oz 9.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
A
can
little
see
bit of
that. Yeah,
attitude going on there.
yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was really cool. But we get to this point, I think this is episode 4, where we come face to face with the timekeepers. What did you think of when Sylvie throws her dagger at the timekeepers and the head falls off?
Yeah, let me know what you think, man. I don't know. I'm throwing it back on you this time.
Oh, I said it. I said at the very beginning that I thought that we would see a variation of someone in this series. I told my boss, I said, tell your husband that we will see fill in the blank in this series. And she was like, okay. And I said, I'm sure of it. And when the heads fell off, I was 100% sure I was right, hoping that I was right. I was right. But yeah, so I thought just that. I thought it proved the path for me to be right on, and that made me happy because I like being right. So,
Yeah, and one thing I can say about this series is that every time we got to the point where we needed to have a reveal or there was something lurking around the corner, I was never disappointed. I was never disappointed. First, of course, Lady Loki Sylvie popping up. My jaw was on the floor half of this 6 episode arc. Especially with the timekeepers, that was pretty amazing as well. There were signs that it may have been kind of obvious. And plus, if you watch any of the other videos that are out there on the internet, people are always speculating as well. So I kind of didn't think they were. Well, I put it like this: I kind of always figured there was something greater behind what's going on. So I was semi surprised when that happened. Did happen a little too easy to me, but and
okay.
and actually, I will say that fight in the Timekeeper's Chambers. That was probably one of my least favorite parts of the whole series because I feel like the fight wasn't epic at all. It was just like they're just pretty basic choreography there. So that one didn't jump out to me at all. But definitely the mystery when the head gets severed was a draw job. And
Yeah.
of course too when Loki gets tased or phased, whatever they call it, pruned.
Hmm. So when we get to the point to where you see Sylvie and they go beyond Alioth and they get to this castle, which was another point of me saying, "Oh, cool, I'm right." But they get to the castle, they go in the castle, the doors open, and you see Jonathan Majors sitting there.
Yeah, another Lovecraft country person.
Yes, indeed. And
Yeah.
what did you think when you saw him?
It was kind of amazing, but still, I guess I was kind of spoiled on that as well. Just from people predicting of what it could be. I will say, out of all the possibilities, I'm glad it was him because if it had been another Loki, I would have been upset. I'm like,
Hmm.
this is not ending the way I thought. So yeah, having it be who we think is Kang the Conqueror.
Hmm.
Is pretty amazing, and it sets up a huge part of what we're going to see next in the MCU. So, yeah, amazing reveal, and the way the character was played was almost maniacal esque.
Now,
Cra-
remember, he does say that he is older. He was much older than he looks. Remember?
yeah, yeah,
So, this is where. So, Marvel had said that we would not see Kang until Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. So, I don't believe that they lied or misdirected by him, Jonathan Majors, being in this series because that was not Kang. That is him, but that's not Kang. This idea of he who remains that
yeah.
they keep referring to is a character that has nothing to do with Kang, but I just say that that is a name that he has been called. What I think his name is, and if we see him again before, maybe in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, I think he will call himself by the name Immortus because Kang, at one point, as he gets older, decides he no longer wishes to conquer and starts working with the TVA. But he still has the colors of Kang, but he wears a long cape, hence the cape that he was wearing. He's much older, and he calls himself Immortus. So that's where I'm saying I'm right, as it is the actor playing a version of Kang, but it is not Kang as we see in that final moment standing there in the statue that we see.
It's definitely a great premise where, as is explained in that last episode, where we have this guy who seems to be pretty bad by doing this thing to maintain a sacred timeline, but in his words, this is the only way. This is the way to keep things from going really crazy or bringing back the time war. This is what needs to be done. So, from our point of view, we're seeing people who verge off, go left when they should have went right, be
Right.
pruned, and here forever be gone from existence. But what he's saying is, if it does not go this way, much worse things are much worse versions of me are to
Are out
come.
there. Yes.
So, that's a pretty big setup.
So were you shocked that she killed him?
It had to happen.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was gonna happen when we first saw him. I mean, especially when he got to say there's multiple versions of me. I was like, okay, this is kind of where we're going. He gonna die.
I did find it interesting that his death, his being, meaning his existence, was what was holding reality in check. Because as soon as he died, everything started you know, going off again,
Now, I
branching
think
again.
for me, I think it was doing that because the TVA was, from my point of view, it did that also because the TVA was crumbling as an
Okay,
organization.
good point. I
I
get
mean,
that.
of course, it's because he died too. But to
Yeah,
me, it's like because the TVA, which was maintaining that, started to crumble.
good point. That
Um,
very good point.
so I don't know. I don't know. It's so we're firmly within the multiverse in the MCU now, which is crazy to say, but
You know,
interesting nonetheless.
and it's the perfect segue into the next variation or the next series that we're getting, which is What If, which now gives new meaning. It's not just a what if story. It's what if let's look in on these other variant timelines.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah, and of course, a great justification for bringing in all of the Fox
Hmm.
and the Fantastic Four stuff that we've had in the past to to say it existed. It might not be a part of our universe, but it exists out there somewhere. And maybe they could bring in elements. I don't think they will in the case of Fantastic Four, but I think they will bring in some elements of maybe some of the X-Men stuff.
So maybe they will. I'm going to disagree with you. I think we've already seen an element of the Fantastic Four.
Okay.
I think we just saw in episode 6. If they
Well,
keep,
I know who he is,
you know who he is.
but
He's
but
Nathaniel.
maybe not that Fantastic Four.
Four.
Maybe
Gotcha.
a new version of
Oh no,
our.
yeah. Okay,
Not
cool.
now. It would be cool if they made it. If they say he's the descendant of the Fantastic Four movies we saw back in the early odds. That would be
Right.
cool. But I
You
don't
know,
think that.
and who's to say that we won't get a cameo in Multiverse of Madness of the and I cannot remember. I cannot believe I can't remember the actor that plays Captain America. Um,
Wow.
Captain America actor playing Johnny Storm.
It's Chris something.
Chris
I can't
Hemsworth.
remember his
No.
last name.
Anyway,
Are we live?
Captain. Yeah, no, we're not. But Captain America playing Johnny Storm. So Chris Evans.
Chris Evans. Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go.
So who's to
I'm not
say?
you can tell I'm not a Chris Evans fan.
So who's to say that we won't see a Chris Evans playing Johnny Storm? Possibly, just as a
Yeah.
cameo. You never know.
Yeah, maybe.
Or in old footage. You never know. But what we do know is, unless the reality branches before I ask this question, final rating, what would you give Loki?
Easy 5.
Easy 5.
Easy 5.
You know what? I'm
Can I
going
give it a
to
6?
no, I'm going to give it 5, 5, 5, 5 because my fives keep branching because they're just, awesome. So a whole bunch of fives as they continue to branch. So that's what I'm going to give it.
All right.
And it's coming back. It's the first one that's officially getting a season 2. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
That should be interesting.
that is very interesting. So Clarence, if I were to ask you where else might you be found on the internet, where would you tell us?
I would say head over to discussingnetwork.com.
Awesome. Well, you know what? I will second that, and I will end by telling everyone listening, thank you for listening, and we will be back next time. And broadcast.